Blake Lively is dumb, and I mean really dumb. She has told on herself so many times, and people digging up old videos. Take a listen to her.
Pink sticker where I'm supposed to go and say what I'm supposed to say, but I also knew that that wasn't fulfilling for me, that I wanted to be a part of the storytelling, that I wanted.
Marvel's unexpected lawsuit against Blake Lively sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry. Fans of the franchise were completely blindsided when it was revealed that the powerhouse studio had taken the rare and bold step of suing the actress. Marvel, typically known for keeping its legal affairs under tight wraps, shocked both insiders and the public by going public with the dispute. The question on everyone's mind: what could drive the studio to such an extreme measure? According to sources familiar with the matter, the lawsuit centers on accusations that Lively improperly handled confidential material connected to the Deadpool series. Some reports even claim she may have shared restricted information in an effort to influence public opinion while facing her own wave of controversy. For someone with a long-standing image of professionalism, the idea that Lively could be tied to such a major breach left many stunned. The confrontation between Marvel and Lively, two names hardly expected to be at odds, set off a media frenzy. The studio's decision to take legal action publicly suggested the breach was serious enough to warrant breaking their usual silence. Whispers of trouble had been swirling around Blake's professional life for months, though few expected it to spiral into a legal battle with one of the most dominant studios in the business. Surprisingly, the conflict didn't begin with Marvel. It all stemmed from Lively signing on to star in a highly awaited film adaptation led by director Justin Baldoni. Audiences were initially excited by the collaboration, expecting a touching and powerful film, but the optimism faded quickly as behind-the-scenes friction began making headlines. Baldoni, who not only directed but also co-wrote the screenplay and planned to act in the film, maintained tight creative control over the project. Insiders say Lively felt creatively shut out, with her contributions frequently disregarded. As tensions built during production, Blake reportedly grew more and more upset by what she saw as Baldoni's overpowering influence. What had started as a promising film venture quickly began to fall apart, and when Lively decided to speak out publicly about the on-set issues, things escalated, eventually pulling Marvel into the mix and resulting in a lawsuit that nobody saw coming.
Sticker where I'm supposed to go and say what I'm supposed to say, but I also knew that that wasn't fulfilling for me, that I wanted to be a part of the storytelling, that I wanted to be a part of the narrative, whether that be in the writing, in the costume design, in creating the character. And sometimes I had directors or producers or writers who would welcome that and invite that once they saw that I was able to offer that. And sometimes I would have people who really resented that because they were like, we just hired you to be an actor. Yet when I went in the meetings, I would just seem like I'm just there to be the actor and ready to get the gig. I wouldn't reveal that I actually need to have authorship in order to feel fulfilled. So I think that for them, sometimes that might have felt like a rug pull because you're like, you're trying to assert yourself into something that we didn't hire you to do. And so it was a really strange position to be in because I felt like I don't want to just be an actor. I want to have more authorship. So I think that it's about, knowing what I want and what I.
Blake Lively accused Justin Baldoni of orchestrating a media smear campaign against her, but the evidence told a different tale. The controversy intensified when Lively claimed that the director was behind negative stories portraying her as demanding and hard to work with during production. The accusation quickly dominated headlines, sending new shockwaves through the entertainment world. Given Hollywood's long-running pattern of influential figures shaping press coverage to their advantage, many were inclined to believe her. Support poured in for Blake, especially from fans aware of the recurring trend of women in showbiz being unfairly targeted. However, the narrative soon took a sharp and unexpected turn. Justin and his team clapped back with receipts, extensive text message exchanges that painted a contrasting picture. Instead of being the target of a character assassination, the evidence seemed to suggest that Blake was strategically controlling the narrative herself. The exposed messages reportedly included subtle threats and hints about tapping into her powerful circle, allegedly referencing her husband, Ryan Reynolds, the leading face of Marvel's billion-dollar Deadpool franchise. The public was stunned. Was Blake actually the mastermind, using her industry influence to steer the storyline and shape outcomes in her favor? What initially appeared to be a straightforward case of a female actress standing up against male dominance quickly unraveled into something much murkier. Quiet chatter emerged about high-level calls with elite media executives and cryptic mentions of dragons, a known Hollywood term for untouchable power brokers. Suddenly, the scrutiny shifted from Baldoni to Blake. Public opinion turned sharply. Where she was once viewed as the wronged party, she now found herself under suspicion as the potential architect of the chaos. What started as a typical behind-the-scenes clash escalated dramatically once it crossed into Marvel territory. And not just any Marvel title, Deadpool. Ryan Reynolds, widely credited with reviving the character and turning it into a global hit, had become one of Marvel's most valuable assets. His humor, charisma, and creative involvement were considered integral to the franchise's identity, making him nearly impossible to replace. But as Blake's feud with Baldoni intensified, so did the murmurs that her conflict was pulling Ryan and Marvel's heavily guarded secrets into the line of fire. Visible fractures began to emerge in what was once seen as an unbreakable alliance. In a flash, Deadpool, Blake, and Marvel were ensnared in one of Hollywood's most unpredictable power struggles.
Baldoni's legal team thinks so, saying the character is a deliberate attempt to mock, harass, intimidate, and bully the star.
Can we just be done?
Ooh, we're just getting started.
E.T. obtained the 5-page demand letter Justin's attorney sent to Marvel and Disney asking that they preserve all relevant documents relating to the development of the character. The evidence linking Baldoni to Nicepool? Well, there's the man bun, a hairstyle Justin had for years, and references to body shaming, something Blake accuses Justin of doing.
She just had a baby too and can't even tell. I don't think you're supposed to say that. That's okay. I identify as a feminist.
Here I am doing my part, trying to be a feminist.
Marvel's shocking legal action sent tremors through the industry. Blake Lively found herself at the center of accusations that she leaked confidential Deadpool information amidst a behind-the-scenes Hollywood power struggle. Insiders started murmuring about a disturbing possibility that classified Marvel intel had been used to steer public perception in Blake's favor. Could she have really revealed sensitive material to shift attention away from her own mounting controversies? At first, it seemed unlikely, until Marvel's legal team discreetly launched an internal probe. Attorneys for the studio meticulously reviewed messages and records, trying to determine if Blake had accessed or exposed protected details about Deadpool's upcoming developments. The notion that Marvel's most prized franchise might be used as leverage in a personal feud was almost unthinkable. Yet, the theory persisted. Even loyal fans were baffled. How could leaking Deadpool intel possibly benefit Blake during a dispute tied to a completely separate film? The most straightforward explanation was also the most convincing. Any exclusive scoop, whether about a surprise character, pivotal plot element, or leaked dialogue, would dominate news cycles. And with that media frenzy would come a distraction. If Blake did, in fact, engineer such a leak, it would be a calculated move of Hollywood-level misdirection. The very idea was chilling in its precision. What better way to bury bad press about on-set turmoil than to detonate a Marvel reveal? The internet would spiral into theories, speculation, and non-stop coverage about the future of Deadpool instead of focusing on Blake's feud. And given Ryan Reynolds' central role in the franchise, it wasn't hard to imagine Blake having indirect access to tightly guarded information. Intel typically locked behind strict NDAs and secured systems. But what started as quiet speculation erupted into a major legal storm when Marvel did the unthinkable, file a formal lawsuit. Known for handling internal matters with complete discretion, the studio issued a rare public statement. While the announcement didn't name anyone, it confirmed that someone had intentionally misused proprietary franchise material. It didn't take long for insiders to reveal that the unnamed figure was none other than Blake Lively. Behind the scenes, Marvel believed Blake had either leaked or threatened to leak Deadpool content as part of a deliberate attempt to redirect attention from her escalating dispute with director Justin Baldoni. The fallout was swift and explosive. Hollywood spiraled into chaos. Marvel had never taken legal action against a major celebrity's spouse, especially not someone as high-profile as Blake and closely tied to Ryan Reynolds, one of the studio's most bankable stars. This wasn't about salary disputes, scheduling issues, or broken contracts. This was about internal sabotage. Marvel suspected that someone with insider access had turned their most valuable property into a pressure tactic. The stakes were massive. If the allegations were accurate, it signaled a profound betrayal of trust between the studio and one of its most powerful Hollywood couples. Was the Reynolds Lively media empire beginning to crack under the weight of the scandal? Blake's team responded immediately. Her reps issued a strong denial, insisting she never had access to privileged Marvel data, much less shared it. They slammed the lawsuit as unfounded, suggesting Marvel was making her a scapegoat for internal leaks unrelated to her. But even with Blake's forceful rebuttal, a major problem loomed: those already infamous text messages exchanged during her dispute with Baldoni. Circulating through insider circles, the messages portrayed a side of Blake at odds with her polished public image. They hinted at calculated moves, quiet influence, and strategic positioning when it served her interests. The real question became not just whether Blake had access to Deadpool intel, but how far would she go to protect her image? The matter had evolved beyond a legal spat. It had transformed into a full-on battle of power dynamics, influence games, and the murky moral code that governs Hollywood's elite. Meanwhile, Ryan Reynolds, normally the undisputed king of viral responses and cool-headed humor, had gone completely silent. The man who could spin even the worst headlines into a clever meme had vanished from the narrative. His absence was deafening. Speculation exploded. Was Ryan working behind the curtain to contain the damage? Was he shielding his brand or defending his marriage? Some industry sources suspected he was trapped in a no-win scenario: defend Blake and risk his long-standing Marvel partnership, or stay quiet and hint at internal fractures. Either move came with massive risks. As the lawsuit escalated, Justin Baldoni, the man whose conflict with Blake had ignited this entire saga, found himself surrounded by a storm he never meant to spark. His original intention had been simple: defend his artistic choices and challenge Blake's claims of his controlling behavior on set. But now, he was answering questions that had nothing to do with directing. Carefully choosing his words, Baldoni reiterated that he only aimed to clarify their working relationship. But the narrative had already spun out of his hands. A private dispute had morphed into a high-stakes Marvel scandal, threatening the reputations of major players, the future of a billion-dollar franchise, and the image of one of Hollywood's most iconic couples. And for the first time in Marvel's history, the studio made it clear: no matter how famous, no one was beyond accountability.
Representing that from the outset, and if people are into that and want to collaborate with me for all I feel like I need to offer and bring to a job, then those are the people I should collaborate with. And if I see that it's people who are, whether this is in business or acting or whatever it is, where it's people who I can see that feels like that's stepping on their territory, that's not going to ultimately be a fulfilling relationship for either one of us. So I think it's about being upfront about like knowing what you actually need versus just like trying to get the job. And then, once you're in it, sort of revealing the scope of your sort of needs to be, fulfilled.
Completely with your authentic self, right? And unapologetically, versus trying to hide it. It is what makes you great and brings out your best work.
But it's hard because you feel so replaceable, and people tell you all the time, how replaceable you are. So it's like, I have to do the thing to get the job. So it's tricky,
Exactly.
And sometimes you lose the job, but like if you did it and you weren't fulfilled anyway, then it wasn't worth it.
The Marvel vs. Blake Lively legal battle has rapidly evolved from a personal conflict into a full-blown crisis threatening one of Hollywood's most lucrative franchises. In interviews, director Justin Baldoni admitted he was shocked when Marvel, known for its notoriously secretive operations, suddenly got involved. What had once seemed like a routine industry clash had now escalated into something far more dangerous. If Blake Lively had truly used classified Deadpool information to shape public perception, the consequences were far beyond what Baldoni had ever anticipated. Despite the media circus, Justin stayed focused on completing his movie, trying to steer clear of the legal firestorm spiraling out of control. But Marvel wasn't retreating. Their lawsuit hinted at serious breaches involving confidentiality, contract violations, and potential financial repercussions. Though no specific figures were disclosed, legal analysts speculated that money wasn't the main motivator. Marvel was likely seeking a court injunction to block any future leaks. This wasn't just legal action, it was a direct warning to anyone bold enough to tamper with Marvel's intellectual assets. Then came the bombshell: depositions. If the case proceeded, Marvel's legal team could demand phone records, emails, and personal communication logs from both Blake and her husband, Ryan Reynolds. The objective? To determine whether classified Deadpool details were strategically deployed as leverage. If so, intensely private information could enter the public domain, exposing a famously guarded Hollywood couple. What had begun as on-set friction between Blake and Baldoni had morphed into a reputational and legal storm capable of upending A-list dynamics and rattling Marvel's billion-dollar empire. Could Ryan Reynolds, the face of Deadpool, realistically continue portraying the role if his wife was accused of undermining the very studio that made him a global icon? Would Marvel risk keeping him on if his personal ties jeopardized the brand's integrity? The question wasn't just dramatic, it was monumental. Fans became bitterly split. Many of Blake's longtime admirers refused to believe she'd jeopardize the franchise that had resurrected Ryan's career. Deadpool wasn't just a success. It was a comeback story, turning Ryan from a struggling actor into one of Hollywood's top names. Why would Blake sabotage that? Yet, critics pointed to damaging text messages from her feud with Baldoni, which painted her not just as an actress but as a tactician, possibly manipulating media coverage to shift attention. That theory gained traction when her attorney abruptly withdrew from the case, citing unreconcilable conflicts regarding her version of events. Was that the telltale sign? Had her own legal counsel lost confidence in her narrative? Then speculation turned into substance. Smaller entertainment outlets began revealing they'd received exclusive tips about Deadpool cameos, plot changes, and potential rewrites. Initially dismissed as typical industry gossip, it became more serious when connections were made between the leaks and the peak of Blake's negative press. Marvel's legal filings reportedly included time-stamped evidence showing these leaks matched the timeline of her public fallout. If true, this wasn't coincidence. It was a deliberately timed diversion, one of the most strategic Hollywood leaks in recent memory. As the allegations grew, the media frenzy exploded. Every podcast, tabloid, and social feed fixated on one burning question. Had Blake Lively gone rogue? Paparazzi crowded her home with Ryan, while social media dissected even their most innocent posts for hidden messages. Would Blake quietly settle to contain the scandal or fight back and accuse Marvel of making her a scapegoat? One rumor even suggested she was preparing to issue a public apology, hoping to cast the situation as a misunderstood misstep. Some believed that if she struck the right tone, she could de-escalate before irreversible damage set in. But time passed. No apology. No settlement. No clarity. Marvel stood firm. The studio made it clear, leaks would not be tolerated. Confidentiality was non-negotiable. Protecting their creative universe was paramount. Studio insiders reiterated to the press that this lawsuit wasn't just about Blake. It was about safeguarding the very structure of Marvel's cinematic universe. Known for its obsessive security measures, strict NDAs, encrypted documents, and real-time tracking, Marvel had built a fortress around its content. If someone as close as the wife of their leading actor had found a way to penetrate that, it wasn't merely a scandal. It was a crisis. Then, for the first time, Ryan Reynolds broke his silence. On his personal platform, he released a short, carefully worded statement. No jokes, no signature wit, just a respectful acknowledgement of the situation and appreciation toward Marvel. But he never mentioned Blake. No defense. No denial. No solidarity. Just a neutral nod to the company that made him a star. To the public, that omission said everything. Was Ryan distancing himself from Blake's growing legal mess? Or was he caught in the crossfire between the studio behind his career and the woman he married? His silence felt intentional, measured and strained. Behind the scenes, speculation swirled that their relationship was under stress. The playful online banter fans loved between them had gone silent. Their feeds became sterile and overly curated, stripped of personal warmth. Was it calculated damage control or the result of real fracture lines? Some sources close to the situation claimed Ryan had been blindsided, unaware of the full extent of Blake's involvement, or the leaks. That version painted him as a man trying to hold everything together in real time, balancing a collapsing brand and a crumbling home life. If true, it explained his careful tightrope walk, neither condemning Blake nor offering her any public support. Blake's entire career now teetered on the edge. If Marvel proved she had intentionally disclosed classified Deadpool material, she could face industry-wide blacklisting. Studios might view her as a risk too great to cast in major projects. Even if she avoided legal punishment, the whisper of betrayal could shadow her for years. But if Marvel failed to present concrete proof, Blake might slowly rebuild her image, although Hollywood tends to remember everything. Marvel, too, was taking a gamble. If the public saw them as overreaching or unfairly targeting a beloved star, backlash could follow. But the fact that they moved forward at all suggested they believed their case was airtight. Meanwhile, Baldoni quietly completed work on his film, having tried to keep his distance from the chaos his creative disagreement had sparked. When asked about the case, he simply described it as surreal to witness something so personal spiral into a global firestorm. Even members of his crew admitted they never imagined things would escalate to this magnitude. But the reality had become undeniable. This wasn't just about Blake anymore. It wasn't only about Ryan or Justin or even Deadpool. It was a story of power, influence, and the fragile boundary between a polished image and behind-the-scenes maneuvering. Could Ryan's connection to Blake cost him the role that redefined his legacy? Would Marvel recast Deadpool if they concluded his personal ties were too volatile? Was Blake truly willing to take this battle all the way through the courts, or would she fold under mounting pressure? Insiders claimed she was considering a bold move, offering full access to her personal devices to clear her name. If she could prove she never directly leaked anything, it might force Marvel to reconsider. But critics weren't so sure. Those who'd studied her messages from the Baldoni conflict noted something unnerving. Blake had a way of implying without directly stating, of orchestrating outcomes while maintaining plausible deniability. If Marvel's probe uncovered a pattern of subtle manipulation or indirect leaks, the entire case could hinge on a single distinction. Was it innocent ambiguity or deliberate calculation? For fans, the stakes felt deeply emotional. Blake Lively had long been admired for her grace, wit, and carefully crafted public persona. But audiences also held fierce loyalty to Marvel. And Deadpool, Ryan's signature role, was too iconic to be stained by scandal. With no resolution in sight, one fact remained: this had gone far beyond Hollywood gossip. It was a high-stakes confrontation that could reshape careers, redefine creative partnerships, and shift the public's loyalties. Marvel was engaged in a legal battle with one of the industry's most visible names, and fans were stuck in the crossfire, torn between the studio they trusted and the actress they loved. Online debates ignited: was Marvel being excessive, or merely defending its creative crown jewels? Industry insiders called it a cautionary tale, a case study in what happens when celebrity ego and billion-dollar content collide. One day, Blake was a respected actress facing a tough production. The next, she was the subject of a lawsuit from the most powerful studio in the world. The brutal truth. In a world where secrets are everything, even the biggest stars aren't untouchable. Whether it ends in a discreet settlement or a courtroom spectacle, the aftershocks are already being felt. And Hollywood is watching closely. Because up there at the top, one misstep can turn even the brightest star into a cautionary footnote.